All right, it's good to see so many faces out here. Hope everybody's doing good. I missed last month because of just a little bit of precaution on and having to run through the COVID thing, but glad to be back this month. Got a good show today. Got a good demo. I think we're going to really enjoy what Kevin's going to show us tonight. We'll run through what our agenda tonight is. We got club announcements. We're going to have our member demo of turning some spheres. We don't have a silent auction table tonight. We'll try to get that in the next couple of months. We'll try to get that going again here. So we'll have a short break after the demonstration and have some light refreshments. And after that, we'll get into our February challenge and our show and tell. And I apologize because I don't know that the challenge was well announced this last month. I think a lot of people had a question on what we're doing. It was, I think, to try to utilize one of the tips or tricks or jigs that were demonstrated, or I think if you had your own, you could do that. So we'll make sure Kevin gives us clear direction at the end of his demonstration on what our challenge is for next month, and we'll be.
You may not like it.
But that's all right. That's all right. That's why they call it a challenge, right? All right. So let me run through announcements that are pretty short and quick and happy. 2022 KCWT membership fees are due. So if you haven't paid, please go to the website or check with Kevin and figure out how we can get you paid. But just to let you know, we do have 126 members that have already paid this year. So we're doing really good.
About 3 or 4 of that.
Okay, so we've got a few more rolling in. So, and really for this time of year, that's really, really good. We're also our board is looking for a new member at large. We're going to lose Mark Inman. He's been with us for probably 3 or 4 years here and helped us get through a lot of things. So if you're interested, the member at large is probably the least time consuming of all the board positions. You're basically there trying to give ideas, help work through issues, and volunteer for different opportunities that come up along the year. But if you would like to consider that, please get a hold of me or get a hold of Kevin or get a hold of Sean. Any one of us can get you lined up and basically show up at the meeting on every first Monday of the month, and we'll let you set in with us and see how things are going, even if you just want to kind of see what it's like. We have started this mentoring program. That's kind of one of the things that I was trying to get started to help out some of our new members, to give them somebody to be able to contact and maybe set up a meeting where they could get together and go over small projects, maybe even just starting out on a lathe type direction for somebody that has never been on a lathe. It's a slow start, and I've heard from several members that I think the forms that were attached kind of turned them off or gave them. I think our members would prefer that it was just a handshake and hey, let's show up. What we're talking about in the with the board is, I think as long as our mentoring is going on in the shop, we've got coverage through both the OAW and our own independent insurance to cover the Hartford, to cover any accidents in the shop. So the waiver forms in that sense are probably less necessary. And I really was thinking, I was kind of following the steps from other clubs that I'd seen that had kind of had a similar type program when I came up with those forms. So I'm going to kind of try to rethink that over the next few months and see if we can't get a few more people on the list, knowing that if you're in the shop, there shouldn't be any liability issues or concerns. We all know as turners that we're doing something that has an inherent danger to it. We all should be practicing safe methods anyway. So I think as long as we're conscious of that, both the mentor and the mentee, I think we can keep ourselves out of any kind of concerns that way and keep the accidents down to none. So I'm hoping to get that rolling a little bit better. Right now, I've got a full list of 3 people out of our 150 some members. So I think we can do better, but I need to maybe reapproach how I approach you all and requesting for members to get on the list. Speaking of demos, Mike Thomas is our vice president. He gets us all set up with the demos for the year. He is constantly looking for ideas. Because we don't have as many people running through the shop and open shop nights, there isn't as many people to tap on the shoulder that way. So if you have anything that you think would be an interesting demonstration, or if you know of somebody that might have an interesting demonstration, let Mike know so he can make contact with them or get you guys set up. And I think the latter part of this year, we're still trying to fill a lot of slots, right, Mike? So we've got plenty of places for anybody interested, and it doesn't have to be an intricate hollow sphere type demonstration. So keep that in mind. Simple is good, especially in the sense of new members. You know, those quick, simple projects, they demonstrate well, and they do teach our new members some things that they haven't seen before. Open shop will continue as scheduled on the website. Please use sign up sheet if you can remember to on the door, although I do realize, and I've seen this several times and I haven't gotten it. We need more new sign up sheets in there. I'll try to get that. Kevin has got some bandsaw blades for the Powermatic. So I think I talked to David Alexander is going to get a new one put on there. He's going to be a 1/2-inch blade. We are asking to avoid turning curves if you can, because I think the curves are where we're really taking off the kerfs on the edge of those blades. And so if you need to make 5 straight cuts to get kind of your circular shape, you're going to make the blade last longer than if you take 1 curve cut. So about that makes the blades last longer. Keeps everybody happy when the bandsaw is working good. Last reminder on the open shop, we are going to have another cleanup here in February on the 26th from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. I'm hoping that our open shop users show up like they did last time. We got through it in about an hour and it looked fantastic. So hope to see you there. And just a last announcement, let everybody remind everybody of the AEW is going to be live this year, and it will be in Chattanooga, Tennessee. I don't think anybody's set up anything in regards to a group going there, but if anybody was interested in trying to pull that together, I know that there's our rates and things that you can get into, and two signed up right now. So, I mean, just add to that list and it'll be good. We have a little special event coming on called the Urban Woodsman. It's at the Anita B. Gorman Discovery Center, kind of right off of the plaza downtown. 4750 Truce Avenue is the address. We got all the help lined up to do that, but we're going to have some of our members out there demonstrating our craft, as well as they have a lot of outdoors activities and maple syrup or syrups that they get out of trees and different outdoor kind of things going on. It's a fun thing to visit, and a neat little center itself is kind of nice. If you've never been there, I would say stop by and give our members that are demonstrating there an audience for a while.
Hey, Chris, is Zoom working right now? Yeah,
I believe so.
Please wait. The host will let you in soon. Yeah, Mike has to let you in.
Hey, Mike, let Rick in.
Not me.
Oh. All right, thanks for letting me know. Don's going to appreciate that. Okay. We have a couple of learning opportunities for anybody interested. Our professional turner and member, Anthony Harris, is going to offer a couple of intermediate skill level classes. We got the Cooley hat box that will be on March 13th, and the picture 20th. Sorry. They're 4-hour classes. Is that right, Anthony?
Yeah.
4-hour classes, one after the other. Sign up on the website if you'd like, but you'll definitely learn something and improve your skills during those. So look up on the website. There was also an email that went out. Probably another email will go out before the class starts. But it's a great opportunity for our club, and we should certainly appreciate that Anthony is able to provide those for us. Let's see, locating information for KCWT, the best resource that we have is probably our website, kcwoodturners.org. Find about everything in regards to our calendar, upcoming events. You can find challenge information. You can find membership information. So start there. We also obviously have the Wood Chips monthly newsletter that Sean puts together, has some current events, and keeps us up on some of the more recent things that are happening. And if you got a chance, check out the Hand Turn KC Etsy site, Hand Turn KC on Etsy. Wendy is keeping that is our coordinator for the website, and we're always looking for donated items put on there. The more we get in there, the better. We have been as a board talking about some other ways to get more member opportunity and activity in there. So that'll look for more information on that. So that's about all on my announcements, and I was going to give Effie a couple minutes here. He's going to tell us about safety again. Thank you, Effie.
Hi, is it working? Yes. I want to tell you about an incident that we had at the shop where somebody was injured, and luckily we don't have it often at the shop. We had once in few years, but still this is a good opportunity to learn lessons from what happened. It was a beginner turner that turned a big, like a 10 inches ball, and a few things, and the tenant broke, and he had quite a deep cut. So what can we learn from this incident? A few things that could have been done better in order to avoid this injury. One thing was because he was a beginner, he was turning aggressive cuts, especially at the center of the ball. And that was when he had the catch, and that's when the tenant broke. And having a good tenant is really important for especially for a big ball. So doing slower, not aggressive cuts is a good practice. Another thing that he did is when he did the edges of the ball, it was very sharp. So when it broke, it really cut him quite deeply. So when you're doing a ball, make sure that the edges is round and not sharp. And another thing I think that can be done is having the tailstock as a safety measure as much as you can. And not always you have the option to have it, but it's better to have it if you can. So Anthony, you want to add anything?
I think, yeah.
When he was talking about the sharpened edge, he's talking about this, the side of the bowl that you turn around, and then the top you make flat. It makes this corner here. And so that's what can be defeated, make it a little rounder so it doesn't cut you. I don't know if I should show you this, but this happened Sunday. And it's just a little, it's not very deep. Just kind of skins it, but it's the same thing. I have the same tendency. I don't defeat that corner often enough. And so it's always there and waiting for you. So you got to think about it. The other thing is, we were thinking about why. So we've had two of them in the last 5 or 6 months, 2 incidents. Well, why are those happening? And part of it was Effie was here Saturday, whenever it was a month ago, almost 3 weeks. I don't know how long ago it was. I apologize. He was here, and there were 4 new people, and there was no one else to help. And so, I mean, that's a problem. One person has trouble keeping an eye on 4 people who are all working on different projects. And so what was missing, well, we used to have a bunch of people that sat around the table. They didn't always turn on Saturday mornings, and they drank coffee. And they were people who knew how to turn, and if something was happening, they could stand up and would stand up and go and help. And so those people haven't been here since COVID started. So I don't know that it actually solves the problem, but I figured we should start using the coffee machine again. And so from now on Saturdays, we'll have the coffee ready, and people will, I mean, where do you go?
If you make it, they will come.
That's it. Okay. When the coffee was there, the donuts appeared. Yeah.
Hey, Anthony, real quick. I read somewhere that anything below 1,000 RPM, I think everyone can hear me, can't they? Anything below 1,000 RPM, we usually go down. But anything above 1,000 RPM, we usually go up.
The bowl?
Yeah, and if it were to fly off. Is that a correct statement?
I wouldn't say that.
Okay.
Well, one thing is you didn't have a catch.
When the bolt came off, he didn't have a catch. What happened was he was making an aggressive cut across the front. When you get to the center, it's not moving very fast, and it levered it up, and it broke the tenon. And
So was it hardwood?
it was hard enough, but where the tenon was, the outside of the tree, it split right along the growth line.
And was it free wood that was in our shop?
I don't know.
Yes. Okay, I want to say something. I mean, I really do. Number one, I think the board,
Well, people need to maybe have a list of things that the beginner should be doing. Should he be turning a 10-inch size bowl out of crappy hardwood in this shop that is probably all checked and cracked anyway and is an accident waiting to be happen? I think one of the best things to do as a beginner is turn greenwood. It's so much easier. It turns wonderful. The chips fly, or the ribbons fly off the wood.
You don't burn the side of your hand.
You learn so much from turning the greenwood, and then you have to let it dry anyway. So that's probably the big thing. But also, I just think that there should be a step or a process, and maybe the AEW has a list of training things for a beginner to even start tackling. I think too many times woodturners jump in the deep end and they think they know it all, and I'm going to turn a 10-inch bowl. And has he really ever turned a 6-inch bowl? I was that way. I mean, you learn from your mistakes in your own shop, but I will tell you that turning greenwood is a wonderful way to learn to turn, especially when we don't have all the guys sitting around the table like we used to have. So that's probably the biggest issue that I would say is maybe, and I know that the guild probably has something like this with their beginning people that sign up for skill levels to do. It helps. It's a stair-step process. So anyway, that's all I got.
It's a valid point and well taken. I think, Rick, the guild does have a very good safety program, but they've also got a lot more management behind it. It's if we try to incorporate a safety program, then you got a lot of coordination and management that has to happen with that. We've always kept it kind of loose.
That's true.
But you've got a good point, and it's changed since we don't have that group that's just standing around waiting for somebody to ask them how to do something. It has changed. So,
and we have the tool that can kill you.
oh yeah.
And it has, in the past 5 to 7 years, it's killed 2 women.
Yeah.
Who have been turning on the lake that did things wrong.
So valid points. I think I do think that our wood rack tends to get filled up and then not scrutinized enough. So during our shop cleanup, that's one of the things that we'll look at is you get the stuff out of there that should be out of there because there is a lot of split up stuff in there. And for the beginners out there, from what I've heard and seen and read, spindle turning is a great start because you'll learn your tool control. Yes, sir.
Shooting lumber has a whole lot of poplar in their throwaway bins.
Yes, I've used that.
Yeah, and you know, if somebody would cut their 3/4 inch or whatever, you talk about spindle. I started my granddaughter off about a year ago, and I started her with poplar because it's so soft and it's easy to do. Then I started her with just spindles. And I wonder if Shooty would give us some of that. We could cut up and
Every time I went over to Shooty, I remember is mentioning that Shooty has poplar wood over there. It's a great cheap source of wood. It is very turnable, and he makes his spindle product out of the 3/4 inch product that he can get over there. I went over there. I've been in that bin. There's all kinds of different miscellaneous woods that you can find in there. And every time I went up there and put my boards up on the counter to pay them whatever they wanted for them, because it's out of their cutoff, they go, "Oh, don't worry about it. Just come see us, when you're shopping." So I've never paid for any of it, but it's always there, and it is a great resource. It'll be flat wood though, but there's ways to use flat wood. There's ways to use 3/4 inch wood, and it keeps you. Sure, exactly. You can glue up and everything. So it's a great resource. I would say utilize it anytime you can. I am running a little long, so let's get it. Oh.
You can get whatever you want free.
So Mike just said if you turn items for them and take them over to Shooty with you, they'll give you all kinds of things that are free. So might try that. Makes good friendship anyway. Tonight's demonstration, without any further ado, is Kevin Neelley is going to show us. He's going to show us a video that was on the AAW just this last month, I believe, and it timed up great with his demonstration, and it was so close to a similar routine of what you go through that he's going to start his demonstration by showing the video, and then he'll move into some of the things that he does slightly different and how he improved that, right?
No.
Well, come on.
So, I hope so. Can you hear me? Is this thing working at all? No.
It's not working.
But yeah.
I didn't do anything to make it work. Hi, my name's Kevin Neelley, and what I'm going to be showing you how to do is make hollow spheres. I've been making hollow spheres for just a few weeks now, actually. Started out by making spheres. I did a demonstration here how to make nice spheres about 2 years ago. It turned out really good. And then I used a similar technique to make lidded boxes. I made a lot of lidded boxes and just progressed into spheres. Spheres are really terribly hard. Hollow spheres, yeah, they're terrible. I probably will never make another one after this demonstration. No, I kind of liked making them. It's funny, I was making a bunch of stuff for this demo in the last couple of weeks. And then 2 weeks ago, AAW sent us out an email with Phil Stratton. He had almost exactly the same technique as me. He did almost exactly the same, not quite. But we're going to show you Phil Stratton's videos, about 10 minutes long, and then I'm going to show you how I do it, and it's almost the same. He leaves out a few details. I can clue you in on that, and we'll go from there. So if you'll show the video.
Alan Stratton from Woodturners. At a club meeting the other night, I turned a perfect sphere. You've seen it in my videos before. This was live. But one of the questions that came up then and in the Sphere Challenge in July was, can you use the same process to make a hollow sphere? Well, why not? It's the octagon, just thread out the middle a little bit, and then turn a perfect hollow sphere. So that'll be the demo today. Now, this is the same cherry wood as this one. Now, this one hollow is about 50 to 60% of the weight of the same size, same species solid ball. So reduce the weight. And it did, well, since it was green wood, it did have a check that didn't get totally turned out, but I'm going to leave that as character. So the next question really is, can you do a sphere with a friction joint in it? Sure. Can you do a sphere with a threaded joint in it? Sure. Can you do a sphere with segmented and face grain orientation? Why not? We have the process. We can do spheres. Let's do it now. This wood is green cherry that I rough turned 2 years ago into a billet and left to dry. As usual, the first task is to trim the distorted wood. Then clean up one end of the cherry and cut a new tenon. I sized the tenon with my dividers and darkened the line for visibility. And cut a tenon on the opposite end of the cherry wood. Meanwhile, I measured the diameter of the cylinder and did the 2 necessary calculations. That is, 3-inch diameter times 0.293 equals 0.879 for the first corner, and 3-inch diameter times 0.414 equals 1.242 for the side measure. That's it. Next, I selected a spot for the beginning point of the sphere. This is far enough from the end to allow me to reduce the diameter while keeping the tenon intact. I am carefully turning this diameter down to the measure for the side, 1.242, but leaving the tenon. With one end established, I can mark lines for the first corner and the midpoint of the side, which is 1.5 inches or 1/2 the diameter. Next, I estimated how much space I need for cutting the sphere in half and a mortise and tenon. Then mark with the divider both lines, staying on the waist side of the center lines. With those 2 points established, I can measure out the end line and the distance from end to the corner line. Now I'm reducing the wood outside the end line to the size of the side of the octagon. It seems crazy to be so particular about the diameter size of wood that will be cut away since it's outside the zone of the octagon. But this should become apparent shortly. Now is that time. I'm cutting off the wood at a 45-degree angle between the line for the corner and the corner of the tenon just beyond the wallwood. This is the same for both ends of the cylinder. At this point, I need to switch from centers to a check mount. Then cut the top from the bottom with a parting tool. Since half of the sphere is still mounted to the chuck, this is a good time to hollow this side of the sphere. I'm using my spindle gouge. Since this is end grain, the spindle gouge does a great job. I just need to be careful not to go too far. But I cannot finish the tenon yet. I'd rather fit a tenon to a mortise than vice versa. Now with the other side mounted to the chuck, I'm hollowing this side the same way as I did the other, with my spindle gouge. The main difference is to true up a straight-sided mortise after I'm satisfied with the hollowing. I'm switching back to the tenon side, mounting it to the chuck so I can trim the tenon to fit the mortise. This is always a cut, try, test process, as many times as it takes to fit. Then I glued the 2 pieces together again.
With the sphere glued together again, I'm first parting off one end of the octagon. Then, after marking the midpoint of the sight side, I'm rounding over the octagon into a sphere. I use a gauge similar to a very large washer with a large hole to assess the curvature of the sphere. Then on the opposite end, I start rounding over into the sphere. Then I use a parting tool to reduce the diameter as a marker. I want to leave enough wood to keep the octagon mounted. How far to go is a guesstimate. I'll take care of that later. I'm using some 80 grit sandpaper to smooth some of the sphere. I found that a little sandpaper now helps the sphere to seat better against the cup centers, coming up very soon. Now I can part off the sphere from the base. I have dedicated cup centers, but since I still have wood mounted in the chuck, I'm going to use that wood for a cup center. I need to hollow to 1/4 to 1/3 the ball's diameter and reduce the outside for clearance. Now I've rotated the sphere by 90 degrees so that the former equator is running pole to pole. A rubber stopper provides non-line support on the live center. Now I'm using a spindle gouge and a shearing cut to attack the ghost image at the top of the sphere. Most of the ghost is the former top and bottom spigot. I have to stop and check that I'm leaving the line running from pole to pole. Then, after just a touch with the 80 grit sandpaper, I mark a new equator line. Now, rotate the sphere by 90 degrees plus or minus. I'm still using my spindle gouge again in a shearing cut. The ghost image is smaller now. I still want to leave the line running from pole to pole. Again, a touch of 80 grit sandpaper will help the sphere seat better again. Again, a new equator line. Now rotate the sphere by 90 degrees, plus or minus. Often by now I have switched to a scraper, but I'm actually still using my gouge. The ghost is nearly gone, but I'm careful to take very, very light shearing cuts. Hey, I like what I have after only 3 rotations. If I did not like it, I would continue for 1 or 2 more rotations. Instead, I'm now switching to the 80 grit gouge. You guessed it, 3 rotations, but I'm not bothering to mark the equator line. Then 3 rotations with 120 grit. And 3 rotations with 80 grit. And 3 rotations with 220 grit. Now 320 grit, but this time I'm applying my beeswax and mineral oil mix. After sanding with the 320 grit, I reapplied more wax oil mix. No more finishing required this time. The beeswax oil is both a finish and a sanding media. I don't need to buff this. I like it as is. So, can the octagon method be used for a hollow sphere? Of course. It just requires a temporary stretch at the middle of the octagon. I glued it back together, but there are many other options. This ball was fun and only moderately difficult to turn. Please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe on my website, tell your friends, and send me your comments and questions. Every week I make a new wood turning video, but please wear your full face shield. Goggles are not enough protection. Until next week's video, this is Alan Stratton from As Wood Turns.
This is the block I started out with. I didn't have a nice big square block. I had these block pieces I bought from a guy, beautiful figured walnut, and I cut them up and I glued them together like this. So I have a split line, unlike what Alan Stratton had, and to make a dovetail area for chucking it, I still have to chuck it to hollow it. I glued on these little pieces. Now, if I was just going to make a sphere that had something like this, and didn't want to waste any wood, I wanted to make just a sphere, I would glue on 1/2-inch blocks to each side. That way, this is about 5-inch cube. I wouldn't lose any of the wood. If you didn't glue on any blocks, you'd automatically start losing some wood. And if I wanted to make a hollow sphere But what I would do is cut it right through the middle and glue in a 3/4 inch piece of walnut, something that's really complements this wood. Glue on a 1-inch block on either end for the dovetails for the chuck, and that's how I would save almost every bit of the cubic of this to make a nice big sphere. But I'm not going to show you how to make a sphere tonight. I'm going to show you what's something worse. It's a hollow sphere. So first thing I did was start it off with this block, and I knocked the corners off. And you want to do that until it's even diameter all the way around, all the way across. That's real important. I'm not going to measure the diameter yet. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start out with the mortise and tenon part. I usually do that about a 1/2 inch. I'll put my glasses on. I use about a 3/8 inch tenon, and the part area that I part off is about a 1/4 inch. So what I'm going to do, drawing that. That's the split line. I'm going to draw 3/8 of an inch line and another line for a 1/4 inch, 1/8 of an inch, I mean, and that's going to be part of the split. Okay. So this area is going to be my mortise and tenon. When I get that cut, what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the diameter again, and then set the lengths of these cylinder halves to be exactly half that diameter, because the diameter is going to determine the length of the cylinder. So here we go. The depth that I cut this for the mortise is going to be the wall thickness that I want. You can have any wall thickness you like, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch. I think Anthony do a 1/16 of an inch, but well, probably has. Okay. So I've made my area for my mortise and tenon. I'm going to start an area where I set where I'm going to part it at. Okay. You can see the 3/8 of an inch section for the mortise. And you see I left a little bit on the other side, just a tiny, tiny bit. And the reason I left that on is that's the same diameter as the mortise. So when I start to hollow out this side, I'm going to hollow it out till that area disappears, and that will be exactly the diameter of my mortise. It gives me a visual place to stop my hollowing, so I don't have to actually measure anything. It's a way I make boxes too. I wouldn't be making a box. This would be the lid, and this would be the base. I don't do it almost exactly the same way. Okay. Now I'm going to measure the diameter and set the length of these cylinders. And use a caliper. And if you never used a caliper before, it's a little bit harder than using these kind of calipers. I can show you how to use one of these though, but it's a lot harder. So this says 3.55 inches. So half of that is 1.5 and about 150. So 3 I'm gonna write that down so I don't make a mistake. So, last thing you want to do is measure once and cut twice. If there's anything important in this whole setup, it's measuring properly. Okay. This calculator says 1.78 is exactly half. So from on this side of it, I'm going to draw a line here. I'm going to cut all this off from this line over, and from this line over, I'm going to cut all that off. And we'll start cutting the excess material off. Somehow Alan Stratton had some fast motion, but I'm not going to be able to reproduce. So I'm going to cut some corners. I'm going to not do a few things that are just boring, like a lot of the hollowing. Okay, I want to make the dovetail for the chuck. And I'll make one in each end. And I'm going to use this gauge. This is how wide open my chuck needs to be. It's like the diameter of the dovetail needs to be to have my chuck properly sit on it. Okay. Not quite. Okay, dovetails are done. I'm going to cut off the center. Make sure that's centered. I'll part it off. Isn't too bad. Okay, so what I want to do is to start hollowing it out. This one's been hollowed already. See that? I hollowed the one without the mortise or the tenon first, and then I did the tenon, kind of different than the fellow on the video did. I don't think it really makes a lot of difference. Just got to be careful. I will show you. I'm going to do a little bit of hollowing. I'm going to use a spinning gouge. And I've used several different things to hollow with. I've used hunter tools. They were great. Spindle gouges were great. I've used half round scrapers. They were great. Whatever you want. I think spindle gouges cut a little bit better. And if you really want a good final finish on them, go from a spindle gouge to a big wide scraper like a teardrop scraper or something like that. And you don't have to do any sanding. I don't really like the sanding inside of those. It looks better, and I think if it's just cut with a nice spindle gouge, then if you try to sand it, all of a sudden it looks worse. Don't know why. What's that? I'm not going to glue it shut. Okay. Remember, I left a little nub on the non-mortise side, so I know how far to cut. That's going to come in real handy right about now. This is the way I make my lidded boxes too. I always leave a little nub on. There's one wood turner that when he trains people to make lidded boxes, he always says leave a little bit of a nub on there. And you'll never have to measure for how for fitting your lid. So smelling out works pretty good. I'm going to show you how to figure out how far to go. That's Alan had a brief explanation of it. I'm going to show you how to make it. You need to know the diameter. You can measure the diameter, but how far to go? It's not real obvious. You never really go far enough unless you measure it. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this on. Okay. Make sure I got the right one. Okay. This is the non-mortise side. And what I do is I make a little disc out of construction paper. And you see that line there, that's the diameter line. So what I want to do is to cut this so it's the wrong one. But I want to cut it so that the disc goes in right up to the line. You know your finger. And you also look inside to see where you got to cut. If you have any bad places, high places or low places, you can kind of look in there and see what you got. So anyhow, this one's done. That didn't take very long. I'll put the other one in. The other one is a little bit the same, but not quite. It's got the tenon. Okay, so this is a bit more complicated too. Because I wanted to make the wall thickness about 1/8 of an inch, I have material in the tenon that kind of interferes with that. If I would have made the wall thickness 1/4 inch, it'd be a lot easier. So what I'm trying to say is, where the tenon goes in, to make the wall thickness 1/8 of an inch, I've had to undercut that tenon. It's a bigger diameter right inside the tenon. I don't know if you can see it or not, but right in here, it's a bigger diameter than it is right here. And so what I've done is I've cut that piece of paper enough to go past that lid of the tenon right here. And the second line is the line that I need to line up at the very outside of the tenon. I'll stick that in there. Okay, stick that in. Well, it looks like it's perfect, but it's not. This is not quite the right piece of paper for that, but I'm going to show you how I actually make it from scratch. It's kind of important if you want to do a really good job. If you don't care, then it doesn't matter. Okay, so measuring the diameter at the tenon. That's what the inside diameter of the mortise is going to be. And it says 3.12 inches. So that's 150, 155, a little bit more. That's the radius. That doesn't even seem right. That's why I measure once and cut twice. 3, 1, 2. 156. So 156 would be the radius of this. So what I'm going to do, well, this is decimal inches. I don't use metric. If you use decimal inches, it's decimal. You can use metric just as easily. But decimal inches, I just don't like fractions. When I'm talking like 1,000th of an inch or 200ths of an inch, fractions are meaningless. They don't really help you any. So these calipers, they're set up in decimal inches. Almost all of them are. Very few of them are fractions. And so it's really easy to measure, 1 inch to 100 thousandths. Inch and a half is 1.5 inches, or 1 inch, 500 thousandths. And you can go into 1 inch, 726 thousandths, almost meaningless. And you don't have to be that accurate. That's to the thousandth, to the hundredth is plenty good. But what I do is I measure to the whatever, divide it by 2, and use that number. I don't really have to know what that number is so much as I use it right off the caliper here. So I'll do it again so I don't make a stupid mistake. Okay. 3 inch, 120. Divided by 2. 1.56 inches. That's a little over a half an inch. So what I'm going to do is set this caliper down, and I'm going to draw the center and the outside diameter of the circle. Then I'm going to set my compass to that. It's one of those things, if you actually did it, and you're making several of them, it doesn't really take all that long. I never worry about how long anything takes. I'm not a production turner. So if I take 2 hours or 8 hours, I don't care. Especially when I'm learning how to do something. So I'm going to cut out this circle. I use construction paper that's a little bit stiffer. This is just a file folder. I'm doing for 10, not terrible. Yeah. Thing I'm going to draw right across the center of this so I know where to stop when I'm hollowing out the north side. Okay. There it is. I'm going to stick it in now. I'm going to stick it in the other one. Okay. You see that? Start out, it's going to be out to here. You keep hollowing. Eventually, it's going to get to there. And that's for an 1/8 inch well thickness. You don't have to do it that thin, but you can get it pretty thin. Because the important thing is it's hollowed properly so that when you're around the outside, you don't go through the wall. If you hollow it too deep on the inside, well, that's bad news. If you don't hollow it enough, well, you're fine. So the next step is to make Make a circle, make a sphere out of that. Now, Mike, can you show that chart that I use for cutting the corners off? It's maybe you can't. Maybe I'll just tell you about it. There's a chart, a sphere making chart on the Woodturners website in the library that it shows how to make spheres using this method that I'm going to use right now. I'm going to turn this between centers. Now I'm going to make a pretty close to perfect sphere. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about going through that area through the center. Okay. All right. Somebody just came in, Mike. Okay. Thank you so much. So that's the chart I'm going to use. And what that chart shows is it shows cutting the corners off a cylinder. Now this cylinder, the diameter is whatever that is, and the length is exactly the same thing, whatever that is. You can use a caliper to set it. Doesn't even matter what it is, but when you want to use this chart, you go to what the diameter is, 3 point whatever, and it'll tell you how much to cut off to start the ball rolling. So I'm actually going to do it a little different way. There's a thing at the bottom of that. If you go up a little bit further, there's a calculation for making a sphere of any diameter. How to cut off the right amount. A sphere of any diameter. I didn't even see that. Oh. There. Can you update that? Is it possible to refresh it? Look from the website? Well, I'll have to upload a new one. So I've given out this page to people that are making 1 foot diameter spheres. There's a guy that makes 1 foot diameter spheres for an artist that carves those spheres. So I'm just kind of wanting to make different sizes. So the way I have one here is I take the diameter and I either look up a certain diameter on that page, or I plug in a calculator the diameter times a certain amount. And this is 3.44. Okay. It says I want to cut off a 45-degree angle using dimensions 1.008, which is basically 1 inch. So I'm going to make a mark right here. Make a mark here. Cut it nicely. It's almost exactly cut at the right spot, right there. We cut a little bit more there. Okay. Okay, I'm gonna cut off this corner. And it's gonna look a little bit more like a sphere. I'm gonna cut off 2 more corners, and it'll look even more like a sphere. When I do it the 3rd time, it'll look a lot like a sphere. And then all I gotta do is clean up. Phil Stratton, he just, Alan, he cut the corner off and then, started rounding it like a sphere. That seems like he could go a little bit more than that, and then be easier for people that don't know how to make a sphere very well. So I'm gonna start cutting. And I'm just going to go get rid of this drive center here and just go to the chuck. It's the drive center is slipping too much. So let's do something a little different. So I'm cutting everything off between those 2 lines that I made. Between that line and that line, between that line and this line. Okay. I'm gonna flatten those areas with a skew held as a scraper. Okay. Made the first cut. The second one, I'm going to draw on there lines here, here, they're there, and they're there, and I'm going to cut off everything between those lines. And calculator says that line is supposed to be 370 inches wide. So line here, line here, line here, line here. Actually, we can kind of start estimating them, eyeballing them. I gotta cut that down a little more. Too big a diameter right one end. Lines. Well, I can't get the pencil in there, so I'm going to have to widen it some more. Okay. I made the second set of lines, so I'm going to cut off everything between those lines. I like those lines a little better. Okay. Starting to look a lot more like a sphere. I'm going to measure one more time, do mark lines on either side of these lines, cut that off, and then it'll be even more like a sphere. Let's see what this thing tells me to do. It's about 1/8 of an inch, so I'm just gonna eyeball it. So on each one of these lines, I'm gonna draw a line an eighth of an inch away from it. Cut away everything between the lines. Okay, that's a diameter sphere. Now here's the place where we the video, Alan Stratton, the video is a little different. One thing we're going to do is I'm going to take this this tool here, and it's screw, but I'm using it as a scraper. Then I'm going to just kind of walk around the perimeter of this. You can kind of look and see what's high and what's low. It's not much. It just takes a little bit. So it's starting to feel pretty good. This is where I start using my measurement. It's a small can lid. And an old timer told me this, how to use these lids and set it on a sphere, and it tells you where to cut your sphere. It tells me that here and here is a little bit too big, and I have to, right here and here, it's not touching. So I've got to cut the diameter there and there a little bit more so that the can lid touches all the way around. I'm not sure there's any way you can see that on the I'm just going to cut that. See if it's any better. It is a lot better. See how it kind of rocks like this? That's because this diameter is too small there. And it doesn't rock like this because the diameter is the right size. That's right. This tests the sphericalness of what you're testing it on. And I think the video showed him doing that, but he almost, you're welcome afterwards to come up here and test that can lid on these spheres and kind of see what I'm talking about. Some are perfect, some not so. It's still a lot better. It's getting better. That's good. It's not really hardly rocking at all. Now, I want to do it on the ends too. I did it right here. Now I want to do it on the end to see if I need any cut on the ends. And I do. On that end, looks like this end's pretty good. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to try to correct some problems down here. That is pretty darn good. It's pretty good on this end, and the center. So now I'm going to do something different. What I made is a sandpaper that'll sand spherically. If you just have a sandpaper, the 2-inch sandpaper, and you try to sand it, it's just going to make a mess of it. What this does, see, it's a 2-inch hook and loop thing. I've cut the guts out of it, and I've cut the ring out, the sandpaper with the scissors. And I've done that for 80 grit. I've done that for many other grits. And what I found out is that you can sand it up pretty fast. And once you get it about where you want it, you can take it off the lathe and hand sand it the rest of the way. It doesn't take much. And the thing about hand sanding is you can follow the lines of the grain. It works really well. So I can feel that it's not perfect, but I'm going to sand it a little bit with this and just see how well it does. This is 80 grit. Wow, that feels pretty good. Pretty darn good. Do a little bit more. And then I'll cut it off the lathe and go from there. And I'm not going to turn between centers either. Okay. So now we'll continue sanding a little bit. The sand the nubs off. A little bit bigger nub on there than what I like, but that's okay. Just about got that. That was machine paper. It's hook and loop. Yeah, so it's just a standard hook loop thing. I mean, this right here. Okay, that's just a dovetail on the back of that, and it's got a hole in it for the shaft of that. Yeah. So I'm going to sit down with my legs or knees have just about had it. Oh, thank you. I'm sure there's a few in the audience that have arthritis problems. But if there's any cool tool that I've used tonight, it's this thing right here. Sanding things spherically. It works so freaking good. I've never seen anything like it. But it's so easy to make, you'll never buy one because they're too easy to make. Wow. That is just near perfect. That's just amazing. So I didn't turn this between centers. I never really liked turning between centers like the video showed. And the reason why is you can never get it perfect. It seems like you put it between centers and you turn, and no matter how many times you adjust it, you still got stuff to turn off. It keeps getting smaller. This one, I didn't turn between I turned between centers, but I never had to turn it between two centers on the lathe. So it's the same diameter I started out with. And I tell you, it's just as perfect, I think. But testing it before you took it off the lathe with that cane lead will get it just darn near perfect. And then you cut it off and have a couple little thingies on the end. And you can do that on a drill press or on a lathe or something like that. You start out with getting the most of it off till you can't feel anything, but not low. And then you go to this gizmo. And just work it around. And I've got sandpaper rings that are cut for different grits. And after a little while, after say 180, I'll go to actually sanding. I'll take this out. And you see the grain on this, I'll just shorten that. I'll try to line up where the ball goes together so I can do a little bit of this. And the scratches start to come up pretty fast. And then I'll go to say 300 or 400 tops, and I'll use 4-aught Scotch-Brite. That's 4-aught steel, but I use Scotch-Brite, and it shows no scratches of any sort. So that's how to. No, I was just right there. I was just cinnamon silver and white. Rick, that's what I've always used. If I make a bowl for use, like if you're going to eat pudding out of this, something like that, I would make jokes. I would use something different. But most of the stuff I make is not made for use. If it was for use, I'd use poly, wiping poly or something like that. But this will look so good with lacquer on it because it'll bring out the detail on it. Well, that's really all I got. I hope you got some questions. Thank you very much. Thank you for putting up with me. Like I say, I started out making spheres, and spheres were fun. And then I made lidded boxes, which are like this, except they're so much easier. And I don't know why I did this. I guess I'm a masochist or something like that. It's got to be some personal problem. But they're sort of fun to make. Any questions? I'll say them why. Yes, it is. Yeah, it was. I put it in my drill press, and I used a razor knife, and I scored it, and then just carved it out. You can come on up afterwards, and here, I'll throw it to you.
Now, Kevin, where did you buy that negative rake scraper?
I've hunted all over for negative rake scrapers, but I found out I had one. I didn't realize it. It's called a skew. I always had one. Yeah.
No other questions, then, oh, yeah.
Look, the challenge is try to make something spherical as you can. Not all. So make it easy.
Spherical for next month's challenge.
And there is a cheat sheet on the library if you want to see that chart.
Yeah, the chart is very helpful. Kevin, when he did this demo
It's 2 years ago.
2 years ago, I went home and played with spheres. Spheres was great because once you do a perfect sphere, you're in. It gives you excitement.
It's like Nirvana.
It's so neat.
I can't believe you actually did it.
That's right.
But this easy way of doing it, it's not like Anthony does it. He does it by eye. Ain't that right, Anthony? You just cut away all the stuff that doesn't look like a sphere. I cannot do that.
I found was when Kevin, after you've done this process with the measurements and stuff, you start to see a sphere shape a lot easier when you're cutting without doing it.
So it really helps you to get away from having to use the marks and just kind of being able to eyeball it. But it's an excellent way to start and realize that I can cut 45 degrees off of this thing that in an area that you don't think, you think surely I'm going to hit the center at some point in this cut. And it worked every time. It was just wonderful. So I would encourage everybody to try to do a sphere for next month's challenge because they're fun, they're challenging, and there's a lot of opportunities in them. Kevin took them last time and would offset them and put some scrape marks in them and give them a little character. And I tell you, if you have a bowl and a bowl full with spheres inside of it, it's a cool centerpiece to anything. So